Previously on All You Need.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
We've seen how Luther beat on the Bible until he found its true message. We're saved by Christ alone, he's given to us as a gift of God's grace alone, and he's received by faith alone. Now, as we conclude our series, we come to the fifth alone statement. All of this is to God's glory alone. If those other four realities are true, then we realize salvation is of the Lord. It's not our thing. It's not even 1% our thing. We have done nothing.
What have you done, Derek? Nothing! You've done nothing! Nothing!
Salvation is 100% God's thing. And if it's all God's thing, then he gets all the credit.
Think about David and Goliath. David was Israel's champion and won the day single-handedly. Who else gets to take credit on that day? No one. All glory goes to God, who works through his Christ alone. So, if God does all the work, he gets all the credit. And that's a challenge to our pride, because we want everything to be about ourselves.
Me, 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 me.
I make everything about me. I'm the central character in the movie of my life. I'm the hero, you're a bit player, and God? Who cares about God? That's the big problem with you and me. We're full of self. But the gospel means that actually God takes centre stage. I'm the bit player in his story. He does it all, which means he gets the credit. He gets the glory. Grace means all glory goes to God.
But what does that mean, all glory goes to God? Is glory a thing that God is greedy for? Is God a divine glory hunter, a sort of cosmic Hoover, selfishly sucking glory out of the world and back to himself?
Suck! Suck!
The medieval church kind of thought so. They followed the old philosopher Aristotle, who basically argued like this. He said, God is the best, therefore God has the best taste. So what is God going to love? Only the best, right? And who is the best? Well, God is. So God can only love himself. That's the way they thought. But if that's true, God then is the most self-centered being in the cosmos. It's all about him. And he uses us to make himself look good, like some almighty Ron Burgundy.
I look good. I mean, really good. Hey, everyone! Come and see how good I look!
Is that what God is like? Martin Luther said no. The God of philosophy might be like that. The God of Jesus is different. In the gospel, we see a God whose glory is all about giving, not getting.
One image associated with God's glory is that of a light. God's glory shines out. Another image is that of a fountain. He's a spring of living water. So God's glory is radiant and overflowing, not self-seeking. As Jonathan Edwards says, what God has in view is not that he may receive, but that he may go forth. The main end of his shining forth is not that he may have his rays reflected back to himself, but that the rays may go forth. Edwards' words echo those of Luther in the Heidelberg Disputation. The love of God does not find, but creates that which is pleasing to it. The love of God flows forth and bestows good. God's glory is not about him loving himself. The true nature of God's glory is love to the loveless shown. Like a light that shines or a fountain that overflows, God's glory is outgoing.
When we see God in the face of Jesus, we realize that he is not a greedy taker. Actually, he's like an anti-Hoover.
She's gone from suck to blow. What? Do something!
In John's Gospel, Jesus is forever saying that he will be glorified by being lifted up. And you think, lifted up how? Lifted up on a throne? On a podium? No, lifted up on a cross. God's glory is seen at the cross. There we see that God is a fountain, because there we see his life being poured out. That's glory. Glory means all grace flows to us. So glory is not a thing God gets. Glory is about what God gives.
But if glory is about what God gives, how then do we give glory to God? How do we respond rightly to a fountain? Well, we have nothing to give. Instead, we must receive His grace as thirsty, empty-handed beggars, and then we follow along, swept up in its outward flow towards others. As Luther once said, God does not need your good deeds, but your neighbour does. Once we receive God's glorious grace, we pass it on. We start to be givers too, but all because of what He's like. God is the great giver, and by grace, we get to join in.
So grace means all glory goes to God, and God's glory means all grace flows to the world. This is the message of the Reformation. As the Scriptures have taught us, God saves us by Christ alone, given by grace alone, received by faith alone. So to our gracious God be all the glory.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Please do like and subscribe and share. And tell us in the comments the kind of videos you would like to see in future.